So you brought up something that it was really interesting. I'm going to stay with the people part of it because it's really important. Most of our audience is really keen to really understand that fork in the road and which way to take. And like the great Yogi Berra says it, like when you get to the fork in the road, take it, right? And so the question then becomes, is scaling up.
Hmm.
AI is both a technology and enabler, but also very broad in the ability to leverage it. There is the application, there's a
Hmm.
human interfacing AI, which we are very much used to, which is the ChatGPTs and the Geminis and the Anthropics. Anthropic, a little less from a consumer
Yeah.
perspective, but if you're a
Yeah.
developer, then yeah, you'd be interacting a lot with cloud AI, with Claude. But there's other part of it. That's one skill set is asking the right questions, getting trying to get your homework done with ChatGPT and not being very successful at it. And there's that part of the technology. And then there's one that could actually land you in a job and do your job better and maybe found a company, those kind of skills. Where's the human skills in all of this, Nick? And you I met you when you were the head of HR. You talked to a
Hmm.
lot of people that you brought into, and now you're a founder. I'm sure you're still talking to a lot of people that are coming into your organization. Where's the people element in here?
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways to I could answer the question. I think one way that is interesting and maybe takes us to an interesting place is, I think as the internet evolves into just more and more AI generated content, we all appreciate authenticity so much more.
Mm.
Um, and I've noticed it, right? I think the content online is kind of like becoming two different types of content. There's just like AI slop, some of it's good, some of it's bad. There's a lot of it. And then there's like really high production value, meaningful conversations like this one that people are going to engage in. And so I think you can take that lesson of saying, hey, there's going to be all of this just like stuff that's going to be generated by AI and a lot of it productive. And then humans still really value each other. And so I think when you get to what do people bring, right? Like themselves is a genuine answer, right? Like I don't want to work by myself. I want to work with people. I love the leverage of AI tools, but I want to work with people. And so I think not losing the human element of like having a workplace that's really fun, right? That you enjoy going to, that you like, I don't talk to ChatGPT about my kids, right? I talk to my coworkers about my kids, right? And so I think that all is like really, I wouldn't underestimate the value of that. And I think it's just like there's an interesting conversation there at some point that people could have around like the future of almost media and where's like the human element and then where's all of the AI content because there's a lot of AI content trying to be the human element and humans are so amazing at like sniffing that out. Like the ability to
Yeah,
detect AI generated content like on a homework assignment really bad, but on a social media post it's like everyone can sniff it out. They're like, yeah, that's not you didn't write that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We could all be deep fakes, having this conversation.
100%. I,
This is
I'm
true.
I'm not I'm not even
Yeah.
here. I'm actually on a train to New York right now.
Hey, just adding to that, Nick, just adding to what Maha asked as well. Could you tell us a bit about Premier and sticking still to the people side of things?
Hmm.
What, how does that solution look like, and where do you have people helping in that solution building? Curious to learn because as we were talking just before we started recording, right? Like AI is AI, and then there's voice AI, and I'm
Hmm.
pretty new to that. We obviously talk to automated sort of voice things when we
Res-
call, all the time, but would love to hear what does that solution look like, and from that, what is the opportunity, where do people fit into your organization as well?
Yeah, totally. So when I think about, the way that we engage, like our team members engage with industry, right? There's a few different ways. At the end of the day, we're going to want to have, one of our customers, they're going to be running software on our platform that is powering voice AI agents that answer the phone or talk to someone in a video game or whatever it might be, right? So that's the shallow version of the product. And so our team engages in a few different ways, and some of them I think are uniquely human.
Mhm.
And some of them are less so. And so I think about our organization in kind of three different groups. Broadly, like revenue and operations, which I kind of lump together. because those skill sets, I think at a startup today are incredibly general, right? Like I want to hire someone, like they need to be able to think through operation, almost like CRM database design. They need to be able to think about that. They need to be thinking about AI video tools. How do we create media? How do we run A/B tests, right? Like they need to be thinking about event strategy. Like there's only going to be, we're a small team, right? We're 5 people right now. We're going to be 10 soon. And that's a team of 3 people that are doing a huge breadth of generalist skill sets, many of which are like require that human element. I think online people would call it taste, right? There's like something that's like, when something's really good, you're like, oh, that's like a high taste thing. And I think particularly when you get into creative spaces, right? Like the media that's produced or the event we choose to go to, right? Is kind of like there's an element of taste there. And so that group definitely needs to have that. They need to be able to operate in a lot of different, in a really scaled company, there'd be 50 different specialists doing what these 3 people are doing. We have our second group, which is our forward deployed engineers. This is a very trendy topic in AI right now. But if you have a platform and you're like us and your job is to help your customers get something live in 2 weeks instead of 5 quarters, one of the bottlenecks ends up being, do they know how to build these systems, right? Like for us, it's, do you understand the ideal way to design a voice UX that interacts with your systems, interacts with the customer on the end of the line. And the result is it's a new field and not very many people know how to do it. So we actually deploy forward deployed engineers. These are, maybe parallel to some of your professions. I know you've done a lot of like kind of the technical sales, both pre and post. And, we have single people who are there from the initial sales conversation all the way through the go live. And even sometimes months through the go live, right? And so they're spanning a larger set of understanding the problem all the way to building. And then our last group is what we call like our platform engineers, right? And they're doing more typical, deeper tech, performance optimization, infrastructure type stuff.
Wow. The second one really fascinates me because it was a conversation that I think I had with a few VCs about 10, 11 years ago. And I said, well, I can't see how we are so siloed in our go-to-market process where, one person does the initial touch and somebody markets it, somebody interfaces with the prospect, somebody else does the initial prospecting, somebody converts it into a lead, somebody converts it into an opportunity. This handoff is so crazy. And there's so much that can be lost in this transfer process. And the customer's interacting with like 10 people within an organization before they can even actually deploy the solution. I mean, it sort of makes sense to have an end-to-end, like one person hand holding it, but it was not humanly feasible in a way. So, but now with AI, it allows like what you talked about, which is like one person from all the way from the beginning to go live and possibly later. That is just opens up the possibilities of organizations go to market, to the customer.
You're just hiring unicorns, right? You're just picking up all the that are available in the market.
That's pretty cool.
Well, it does a lot for people strategy, right? Like if you think about you're going to hire someone like that, you might say, oh, wait, this is what the market says, a forward deployed engineer is willing to pay, but this is their value to me. So I'm willing to pay significantly more and go win that talent. And I think that's very much true of the AI age. And I think the winners are going to be quick to adapt. I think you see Mark Zuckerberg doing some pretty extreme versions of this where he's saying, oh, actually, these people's value to me is so much more than what the market is paying. I also think, the way to think about what you're saying, I had the same frustration. I haven't operated at the scale you have, but I think about it as the value of having a specialized role versus the cost of the friction, right? There's this friction cost of every handoff. And I think because of, in AI enablement and smaller team sizes, or maybe because of AI enablement, the specialization is less valuable now. And because of that, actually like the optimal path is smaller team size, fewer handoffs. And at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of enterprises today who are really nervous about the speed of development. If we go build something and we take a long time to do it over the next 12 months, are we even building the right stuff, or 12 months, is it going to be different? And so just the value of speed it's so precious now, so much more so than maybe in the past. So yeah, I think integrated sales process, I think you're just trying to keep that magic of like CEO, CTO, co-founder, and they can just move so fast and make such amazing things happen for their customers' early days. How long can you extend that runway where you're still kind of doing that?
Yeah, and they're doing it the traditional way. I mean, I could see this whole transformation happen very, very quickly over the next 5 years. This whole thing is gonna be, turned up on, inside out or up on its head. But let's keep that theme because it's really, really interesting. Now, if you were to look at skill sets that
Mhm.
that people are coming to market with, engineers and developers are behind the curtain. They're like sitting there. They're not really talking to customers or prospects on a daily basis. So the needs
Mhm.
are something that they either are hearing through some sort of advisory board or customers telling them they need something, or the founding team, like such as yourself, is defining what those needs of the marketplaces for product market fit. And then it gets translated into a solution. How do you envision, like, so skill sets are very, like you said, specialized, or you could say technical skills. And then there's
Mhm.
the go-to-market skills, like Barsha and I would be hiring people who have better communication skills. They're good from a technology perspective in the space we are looking at, but don't have to be developer ready. Like they don't have to be
Right.
developer level
Right.
competency, but it'd be nice to have if they did have that. But we're
Yep.
all almost looking for customer facing skills, and the
Mhm.
developers are looking for more development skills. Now, if this world collides and comes together, we're talking about a whole new set of skills, or even like a combined set of skills. That seems like a tall order. Like, how do you hire? Like, walk us through sort of your next hire. What would something like that look like? Maybe that'll help us understand.
Yeah. Um, yeah, my dream is you have people that can go end to end. Obviously, that's like everyone's dream in every role ever, right? And so I think to do that, you either have to be amazing at recruiting, you have to pay above market, or you have to compromise and say, okay, I'm probably not going to find someone who is capable of founding a company on their own and convincing them to come work for me in a non-founder role. So I would say I expect all of our engineers to be able to talk to customers.
Mm.
I do distinguish between like our forward deployed engineers need to be thinking about like selling and upselling and getting live. And there's definitely like customers is 50% of the role, but all of even our infrastructure platform engineers, I expect them to be able to be in Slack channels with engineers on our customer side and to hop on a huddle or Zoom call with them and be able to talk through their problems. I think the reason for that is, again, we're going to try to cut all those friction costs of communication out of the system. And so traditional software development, you'd oftentimes have like a pod. I know, like I'm in Boston, Wayfair really, really, really push this system of like your product manager, a designer, an engineering manager that represents a team of engineers. Maybe you put in a UX researcher, maybe you put in like a data scientist you have this pod, and each person brings their own specialized role, and then they operate in 2-week sprints, right? Or something like that, right? It's a very common model. I think if you say, hey, I have an engineer who can kind of do their own A/B tests, and they have some design taste, right? And they can talk to the customers. It's like that person can be shipping updates in a day instead of 2 weeks. And before they couldn't do that because they're not like as fast at writing like A/B tests and all the SQL to get that prepared. But now if like AI can just do that for them, right? There's like you have this one person that's just able to move so much faster. And so when I think about hiring, I'm thinking about that from the engineering side. They have to be able to talk to customers. And I find that there's this trope that engineers don't want to talk to customers. It's like, well, no, they don't want to like go into meetings and do all this like logistics planning. But if you have customers with a real problem about the technology, like I found almost every engineer wants to talk to them and like understand the problem so they can solve it. They love that. So I think that on the more, okay, so we start at that end. I'm saying no, they do have to talk to customers. And then if you start on the other side, right? And we have these, I have we have someone working from us who's here for the summer from Harvard Business School. She's doing an internship. And first project was, okay, you need to go build a voice agent, right? And she's like working in code. Has, super smart individual, like experienced in banking, private equity, corp dev type work at HBS, right? So incredibly competent, but not a coder, right? But no, that's part of getting up to speed at Prim is you have to be able to code up a voice agent in Python or JavaScript and get it end to end. And I think I don't expect her to be doing that for our customers, but if you're going to be selling, like you need to understand the limitations of the system and how to do it. And I think that's just so valuable. So I don't know if I answered it directly of like what is my next hire, but I think talking around like these people have to, like these boundaries can't be firm. They have to be a little bit fuzzier. Is
Yeah.
just there's just so much value to like reducing those friction costs of every handoff in the org.
Yeah, I love that, Nick. I think the reducing the friction cost, not just for startups, I think that's something every business need to think about, right? But I love the point around, the intern, great, amazing, good background, also good experience. But then, how do we make sure she learns coding, not maybe to deploy, but to understand what you're selling, and so you kind of talked about the three teams, right? Like the revenue and operations, the forward deploy engineers, and the platform engineers. And I think Maha and I are very much aligned when we say everybody needs to be customer facing, because we work for an organization who is selling either product, services. We're always selling, right? So I guess the revenue and operations is probably a very generic. I say generic because it's general over all organizations.
Yep.
The forward deploy engineers, it looks like from what you shared about the intern as well, it looks like different people from different backgrounds could have an opportunity to step into that role, because you probably have a structure to train them or show them the way to get up to speed with the coding, but bring in their own skill sets as well. And so curious to. So am I on track when I say revenue and operations is probably the general sort of skills that that exist today? It's not very unique to your organization, or is there a unique thing in revenue and operations as well?
I think there's definitely AI enablement, right? Like there's definitely, I expect people to be like writing documents with AI, right? I expect that. I'll say the intern example, like she exists in that generalist revenue and ops kind of group. I just still expect everyone over there to know how to build our product. That's just an important thing at our stage. I would say a forward deployed engineer might be someone, I think I think that's actually a really great place, to be honest, really great place for that 22-year-old, to bring it back to the beginning of the conversation. Someone who's still generalist, has strong technical skills, but maybe doesn't have all the like instincts and wisdom that you develop of 10 years of architecture planning, right? Like that's a great spot for them to land. Often willing to hustle, right? Someone who's willing and comfortable to talk to customers, right? Like that's a great spot for someone to land. And that's where I would think about like,
and that's that you talk about being adaptable, and I think that's where that space is for somebody who's adaptable. But then it almost sounds like, from what you've shared, you're fast tracking their career, almost, because you're putting a structure together where yes, 10 years of experience is significant, and we can't replace that, but how do we fast track that with AI, with the available resources we've got, and your organization has. And I guess onto the platform engineers then. So we talked about graduates or young people or people who just want to change careers. I think forward deployed engineers are a good spot. Whereas platform engineers, what kind of background, or I'm thinking they're more senior, more technical heavy, maybe grads, or tell us about that role as well.
Yeah. I hope you don't have like hundreds of millions of people watching, because I'm going to give you like the best secret to hiring deep, deep
but
tech.
not yet.
Yeah, maybe this is going to be it.
This might be the video that we.
Yeah. Well, I think I wear the people hat, right? And so I always think about like, where is the like gap in the market from what do people want to do with their careers versus like what are they able to do? What are they able to get paid well to do? And there is this huge area to mine right now. Mine is kind of a dehumanizing word, so maybe that's not the best one. But the huge value to capture is there is just a load of super technical, highly capable engineers out there who there's just this implicit pressure by the organization of like, we need you to do more. And the answer for you to do more is we need you to become an engineering manager and train these young engineers and have them build and guide them. And it's fun sometimes, but very quickly that starts to become a bunch of sprint planning. We're assigning story points. We're trying to think through hypothetical architectures that we might use someday. And then you have these engineers, and many of them are in meetings all day. And then they log in at night, they get a code for 2 hours, they love it, and then it's the same thing next day. And those people are just looking out often at the job market saying, I wish I could just build again. But I still want to get paid like an engineering manager, right? Like I don't want to take a huge pay cut and become a traditional IC in the market. but wow, I wish I could just go build again. And if they're really AI forward and they're early on the enablement curve, like hire those people, bring them in as a staff engineer, but pay them like an engineering manager or a director of engineering wherever they're from. And the value to you, or for us, like the value to us is like they're giving us director of engineering value because they're just coding individually with Claude and Claude and Claude and Gemini, right? All working at the same time. And so huge value in the market. I think there's like both my CTO and our founding engineer came out of that background. And if you talk to them, they would say they are happier than they've ever been and can't imagine going back to a big org where they need to like manage a big team and spend half their time thinking around performance reviews, evaluation, hiring rubrics, sprint planning, all that stuff that if you're someone who just likes to build, like you just want to give them space to build.
Yeah. And it just is fascinating what you just said, because it's not only just going to change how organizations build, but also like the concept of speed, time to market is shrunk so rapidly. Like you said, if it's going to take you 12 months to build something, by that time it's probably obsolete. Like that business problem has already been solved 10 times over. And your solution that you designed in a different plane, 12 months ago may not be the right approach any longer because the plane, the whole dynamics, all the coordinates have all shifted so considerably. So we just put a lot of pressure on humans. Now, if we were to just go to that AI enablement, there is still AI is not perfect. I mean, somebody was just, I read about it that most of these systems are built based on um, average or above average understanding of the problem, which is a human understanding of the problem. So, do we believe that AI systems are smart enough to give you the best answer, or are they giving you the most available or the most referenced answer to a problem statement? So, how do you take that and then go build these very amazing systems like your own solution as well, reliant on aggregation of human intelligence, not yet fully tested out, and then have that replace a human mind, which is super intelligent, like, coming out of HBS, someone like it take your apprentice and then look at the system and say who's capable of a creative thought and unique thought versus a system. Like, how do you balance that out?
Yeah. I think we probably all agree we could probably go run some tests that if you take 10 different people, task them with getting the same answer and sending them at a large language model, there'll be a spectrum of how good of answers they get. And that'll probably be based on how do they ask the question. And so there's like very like interesting ways that you might structure your question. I know we have a little bit of a technical audience. So one example is all these large language models can use tool calling, right? Or they call a function. And that's going to require structured data. And they like to structure that data in JSON. And so if you're going to prompt one of these systems and you're going to structure your data in a way to help the system understand it, you actually are probably better off structuring your data in XML or YAML. You don't want to use JSON because it's kind of already using JSON for a purpose. And so there's like a risk of collision there, right? And you might cause the tool calling to fail. So like that's just one example of where there's like all of these rules, right? Or ways that you can improve these systems' output. I think it's very similar to like, there are analogies, maybe very similar as an oversell, but there are analogies to if you're working with a human and you're trying to get them to give you an answer, there are different ways to ask the question and set it up that it's going to help them give you the right answer. And so there's a lot of intuition and at times rules like the structured data one of how to make these systems perform and give you better answers. My random, like put this on the thumbnail of the podcast, because this is my random advice to someone, is like, you need to go have fun with ChatGPT. My very first, like one of my first questions in my first 2 days using it was, I had a 2-year-old at the time, she's now 4. Which Sesame Street characters are most likely to survive a zombie apocalypse? Please rate them on a tier system, S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier. And it does this amazing job, right? It's telling me why Oscar the Grouch is going to be the most like best able to survive this apocalypse. And I think you start like that, while silly and obviously useless professionally, was a really big intuition pump for like, okay, wow, these systems are way better at humans at taking disparate topics and kind of smashing them together. And so then, you can start building this intuition. And so when I start looking to hire, if someone has a story like that, where they did something really weird, right? But they like developed intuition from it. That's that's almost one of the strongest green flags that I can see in a hiring process, probably behind culture, right? Like I obviously culture is still number one. Culture eats, everything else for breakfast. But the next thing is going to be, do you understand? Do you have some intuition for how these systems are going to respond? Because I think you're right. Like average answers aren't good enough, right? Like enterprises aren't going to want average answers. The only one with higher standard than enterprises are consumers, right? They're not going to be okay with just average answers. And so you have to have the like skills and intuition and rules to make sure you're getting the best answers out of these systems.
Yeah, that hits home, Nick, because it kind of touches on the diversity aspect of it, but diversity of mind and that intuition. Because we talk about equity, diversity, but then I think looking at somebody, having a chat with them, and going, "Well, tell us something random that you've done, or something unique that you've done," and like the way they communicate with an AI tool and what they got out of that, like that is such a fantastic way to kind of see the thinking process, and different people think differently. That is amazing, and that relates really well to Maha and I, and sort of based on why we started this series as well. So that really hits home. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, early in career, folks, earlier on, it was, I remember speaking with a couple of our guests, and they were talking a little bit about, social skills, ability to communicate, curiosity, storytelling, and all of those still are valuable, because the concept of storytelling is only if you have a really genuine story. One of our guests were talking about like a genuine story, it's something that people can relate to. And what you're saying is this: you're taking that and you're making that an interaction. Maybe in this case, tell me a great story about your first interaction with AI. Like what did it look like? And that just opens up the possibilities, in addition to having the technical skills. And you're driving a little bit about the technical skills. Now, technology used to be the realm of people with a technical degree, right? I mean, you go to school, you go to a bachelor's in tech, in undergrad in tech, and then grad school in tech, and maybe a PhD or some other program in tech, and that just sort of made you a techie. But that just is no longer valid, right, Nick? I mean, anybody could be in tech at this point. Everybody should be.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody should be at some degree. I think what's happening is, people are no longer like syntax limited, right? It's
Mm,
hard to go code in Python if you've never coded in Python, because there's all these rules, right? Like what's a
yeah,
dictionary? What's like, how do I write a loop? There's all these rules that you don't know, so you
yeah,
can't do anything. Um,
yeah.
and then there's a whole bunch of different languages, right? And so you're basically kind of, you know, up the creek, as we'd say in Indiana. Um, but now you're programming, and a lot of programming can be done in natural language, right? And
Mhm,
that is something everyone, generally knows how to do. It doesn't even have to be English. I do think for
mhm,
programming, English is probably better, but you don't have to be in English. That's an amazing world. But what isn't lost is, I'm biased. I'm going to be biased. I'll state it, of like an engineer's mindset of like, how do I work from first principles,
mm,
right? I think there's a world in which like people can visualize problems, and you can visualize like a lot of software engineering and like data migrations, all that. Like you can visualize it like an assembly line with like cargo, right? Like if
yeah,
that helps you do it, and then you can start to think through all these situations of like, oh, well, should we load all the suitcases onto a truck and then move them together? Or should we have a continuous stream, right? Like there's all these trade-offs, and you realize that a lot of engineering and architecture is the similar concept, right? And so
yeah.
I think what is more valuable than ever, is having that mindset of being able to kind of like visualize and framework the system and systems thinking.
Mhm.
And one of the best ways to get there is through first principles thinking, right? Why did that happen? Why did that happen? Why did that happen? And I'm really like preaching the engineers like,
Yeah.
manifesto of like just why, and
Right.
understanding at the base level. But I think that um, opens up, software engineering to a lot of people. Because if you're able to think like that, you're able to create the right systems. And I think that's like really half of the equation. And then the other half of
Yeah.
the equation is like, what does someone want? Can you make something like delightful to use? Delightful is overused in tech, but like, can you make it something that people want to use? And those are the two elements of those are the two sides of the coin. And I think it's becoming increasingly possible for a single person to own both. And historically, that's where there's a lot of magic, when someone can understand the architecture and the taste on the front end.
I'm sure that's a relief for all of folks that are like in engineering or building, careers or competencies with engineering, because the foundational part of it is like you can put a 3D printer and print out a home, but if you've architected it wrong, it's
Yeah,
gonna fall
yeah,
apart,
yeah,
even if you
and
have the best materials in
yeah,
place,
and,
right?
yeah, and I'm a little cautious. I don't want to like gatekeep engineering, right? Like that doesn't even have to be a college degree. Like an example, my mom was a NICU nurse, neonatal intensive care nurse working in a hospital. And like I would remember stories of her complaining around like, okay, we have to go from like this incubator to this section, and like we always have to grab blankets, right? So like we should make sure the blankets we're like placing them here because we're gonna have this like easier flow. And it's like
Mhm.
she's not an engineer, but that's like such a great like instinct of like there's a process here and we can optimize it. And so I want to make sure that anyone listening doesn't mean you have to be a mechanical engineer or chemical engineer, and like but it's just this like concept of like deep logical thinking, first principles thinking, and really understanding the why to the system. Um,
Mhm.
and then being able to like think about, okay, how do we make it better? Right. That's like ultimately that's what an engineer is trying to do. It's like, what are we trying to do? How does it work? How do we make it better or more efficient?
Absolutely. It's more the strategic thinking, the structure. You create a framework, like your mom, not an engineer, but she had a process in place. And that might come
Yep.
with an engineering degree, trade sort of training, experience, or some people are just born with it, right? Like there's so many different ways as well. I guess we've had some really, really good conversation here today, Nick. Mahad, was there anything else that you wanted to ask?
I mean, there's so much. We could just keep talking
I know.
until you have to run
I
out
think
the door.
we need to have a offline conversation and we'll speak for
Yeah,
2 hours. Yes.
totally. But if someone like we always ask our guests, what would your advice be to those that are early in career or those that are already in a career and they're seeing the advent or AI into their universe and they don't know how to react to it. I mean, they normally like assume that they are AI literate, right? They are using ChatGPTs in their daily life. They are using it, but not in the way in which they can integrate that into making themselves more efficient, problem
Yeah.
solving quickly, and getting to the
Yep.
answers fast. So they haven't done that much yet because they're still unsure. Like, what would you tell them, those that are trying to switch careers or integrate it, and those that are early in careers? Any piece of advice that we could
Yeah.
share?
100%. I, Nothing would make me want to hire someone more than them coming to me and saying, look what I built. Right.
Mm.
And what I built it doesn't necessarily mean, hey, there's full, software. It might mean software. They might say, hey, I built this thing on Lovable or Replit, or I used Cursor and I coded it. But it might mean, hey, like, look at this spreadsheet, right? And I look at this spreadsheet and then they say, hey, now look at the macros that are powering this spreadsheet, right? I used AI to help me build these, right? Or if you're using Google Sheets, right? Like there's a macro and it's actually hidden in API. I've never hit an API before, but I'm doing it now. Like nothing someone does could do that, could make me more excited than that. Or if they said, hey, look at this, I made this like video and like, let me explain to you how I did it, right? I used Kling AI for this video and I used Hydra for this. I stitched them together using CapCut. I added this music from Suno that was like, once you start getting into these tools and you can just go build stuff, it doesn't even have to be productive stuff a company's going to pay for it. Nothing is going to make me as like a potential hirer more excited than you saying like, hey, this is my resume, but what I really would love to show you is this thing I built because like I'm a builder. I'm going to start
Mhm.
asking you how. And if you know how you built it and all the steps you took, I mean, like, let's go. I'll hire you today. Nothing is more exciting than that. It's how we treat our customers too, right? We don't sell without showing them what they're going to buy. Right? We're
Yeah.
spinning up demos and I give them a phone number to call before they ever sign a contract. And I think the same thing, if someone can say, hey, here's something I built, I am so over the moon about it. We're going to have a great time.
That
That's
is
fantastic.
that is such an awesome advice because it doesn't need to be this large scale software that you build. Like whatever you've done, whether it's for university project, or you just your hobby, or like video. If you want to do a podcast and you're just stitching videos together, but you add the music, that so amazing because that's kind of like people can grasp that and show it, which is
Yeah.
so amazing. Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
for sharing
I,
that. Yeah.
yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
I think the one thing we haven't mentioned is just this concept of agency. And I think 2025 is really hard because you say, what are the things you want someone to have to be effective today? And it's like people use words like agency and taste. And you're like, wait,
Yeah.
what are either of those? It's
Yeah.
really tough. But I do think this agency of saying, hey, I don't know, like I want someone who says, I don't know how to do something, but I think it's possible, and I'm just going to go deep until I figure it out. or I don't figure it out, right? If someone says, hey, I tried to go build this and I did this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and I didn't get it done, that's also a conversation I want to have. But the question, like, I'm trying to find a way to have an interview with someone where I can get to, like, what were you doing at layer 7 or layer 8? And whether you succeeded or not actually is less relevant than, like, what was that process like? Because I can extrapolate a really awesome process where someone's just they have to get to the answer. I can extrapolate that to saying you're going to be super productive for this company. You're going to be great to work with. And so that's like what I'm always trying to get to. And if someone makes it easy by building something, that's awesome.
Yeah, agency. This is a whole different topic. We really have to talk a little bit about it at some point, maybe in another 6 months' time or so, because I think this is the year of the agency, and the AI has really pivoted significantly. And I know a couple of other founders as well that are building around that. And it is very fascinating. I just still don't understand yet how it's going to change my life. I'm sure it'll change my life for the better, but I just don't know, because my initial interactions with it have been a little like, just put the human, please, type stuff. But I'm sure that it'll develop much faster. This has been fascinating. It's just, I don't know how time flew by. It's such an interesting topic because there's a human element in here, and you really brought it out in the conversation. I mean, I truly appreciate some of what you just said. Creativity, curiosity has always been a factor when we hire people, but you're just taking it on to a different level. Like, problem solving is also something we look for when we hire people, but this is problem solving at a different level where they're interacting with the tools that they would eventually be using in their jobs as well. And so curiosity, problem solving, and the concept of look what I have built. I like that. Look what I've done with tech that's been available to me. Barsha, any closing comments?
I 100% agree. Such a fascinating conversation, Nick. You brought some really, really good pointers and some really, really practical examples as well. It's not like, oh, AI here, like this. No, but you actually brought it down and people can relate. And I think it will be a very fascinating conversation for our audience, who could be, founders, entrepreneurs, students, or people trying to get jobs in AI, or people trying to, look for what they should be doing when they're doing their job, but with the use of AI tools that are available. So it's covered quite a lot of stuff with technology and people, and that is what we can all relate to. So thank you so much, Nick. Much appreciate this conversation, and I'm sure we'll continue this conversation, further in future as well.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think this work is really important. There's a lot of people out there that are going to have some interesting times with their career. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely.